Third part. Wesley carried the sheriff's body back to the bay. Though the water that had protected the three of them had since evaporated, the spiders' threads had seemingly lost their stickiness, turning to dust when anyone touched them. On their way back, Meg's mind turned to the matter of the good-looking man Cowboy had seen. In fact, it had been safe to say he completely filled the girl's thoughts. The most important question, what exactly he was doing on the island, didn't even occur to her. Meg's memory struggled simply to recreate the beauty Cowboy had recounted. Yet when they returned to the bay and found no one else there, she had no choice but to return to her senses. Blue had begun to tinge their faintly fogged world, where there were only the furtive sounds of the breeze and lapping waves. Though Wesley and Cowboy shouted for them time and again, no one ever appeared. The trio split up to check out the buildings and the boats tied up at the dock, but their efforts were in vain. Where the places did they run off to? Wesley spat on returning from one of the buildings. His words were swallowed up by the thin fog. I don't figure they were attacked by anything. No matter how off guard they might have been taken, I don't think they could be carried off without a fight. Maybe they fell under a spell or something. Cowboy murmured. They just set out on their own. Meg snarled. Looking over at Wesley, she continued, Every bit of food and water stashed in the boat is gone. Pardon me, but I'm just going to come right out and say it. Those jokes never had any intentions of taking orders from you. We're lucky to be rid of them. But they took off on their own. I think that's the truth of it. Wesley's face was devoid of emotion as he looked over at Cowboy, who looked away for a minute before nodding his agreement. I see. Not much we can do about that. But let me make it clear that since they're not following my directives, they'll be considered civilians who landed on the island of their own accord. In other words, they're guilty of stealing our food and water. They'll receive no compensation, and I'll only give them the bare minimum of aid as a sheriff's deputy. You are an exception to that, but just keep it in mind. Sure thing, Cowboy said, and the lawman watched to make sure he raised one hand. The bounty hunter continued, So, are we going to head off too? He gave a toss of his chin in the direction of the path they'd returned on. Flustered, Meg said, Not without food and water we can't. Why don't we go back first and gather the people and stuff we'll need before coming back? This island belongs to the nobility. No telling what's hanging around out here. Wesley hesitated. He knew Meg had a point. Under the circumstances, that would be the best course to follow. However, his pride wouldn't allow him to run away just because his food was gone and his compatriots had disappeared. What's more, look at that, Meg. The deputy had just turned toward the bay so that he'd be facing Meg, and it was in that direction he pointed. Cowboy had already noticed the same thing. On turning, Meg froze in place. She didn't know when it could have happened, but the prow of the small boat that had borne them there was pointed straight in the air. Not only that, but the boats belonging to the group of settlers were already pointed toward the heavens and shaking in their final moments as if they'd been torpedoed, slowly slipping underwater. However, it was no normal case of sinking. Oh, those hands. Human hands, Meg cried, on the edge of madness, pointing at the countless hands protruding from the surface of the blue-black sea to grip the boats' hulls. Damp hair clung to her expressionless, blue-black faces, looking like brutal wounds. One turned their way. Its eyes met Meg's. Meg felt as if she were about to break off at the knees, but her ears, and those of the other two, were assailed by a voice that sounded like a noise an insect might make. It was pointing in their direction. Those who clung to each and every vessel there turned that way in unison, and their expressions, their gazes, their complexions. The girl from the village was too afraid to even faint as the boats' prows finally sank. It happened with such speed. It seemed as if they'd all been dragged down by some enormous sea monster. The waters churned, and waves barreled toward the rock face. The spray reached all the way to the top, and from the spray there shot a human form. It landed on its belly a mere 15 feet from where the trio stood. It looked like a fish with hands and feet, Meg thought, fighting back her nausea. As a child, she'd often done an imitation of a fish. She'd seen drunken adults do it too. It had been something to laugh about then, but the real thing was truly disturbing. There was one splash after another, dripping water on the rock face all the while. Nearly a dozen men and women closed on the trio, like fish out of water, as they clawed across the ground with both hands. Are they your villagers? Meg shook her head in response to Wesley's query. I don't know. I've never seen them before. Maybe they're the ones who crossed over to the island. Whatever the case, they don't seem too accustomed to dry land, Cowboy said, still not having taken the rifle off his back. He must have been supremely confident of his speed with it. Can you understand what I'm saying? Wesley said to the fish people. Are you the folks who crossed over to the island from the village? See, I came here from your village. I'm a lawman. Understand? A number of them made croaking sounds with their throats. Blue-black water spouted from their mouths and the sides of their necks. They've got gills. They've been changed, Wesley said, drawing his handgun. This was too weird for him to handle. Hey, if you understand what I'm saying, let me know, said the girl. Yesterday, the folks vanished from my village. Are they all here? Are they on the island? Meg's pained figure was reflected in muddied eyes, and the blank look on their faces said they didn't even know what they were doing. Suddenly, a stream of black connected a 40-ish man's face and Meg. Her scream was prompted by the black water. The man had spat it out. As Meg covered her face and reeled, the man spat something else at her. There was a roar of thunder. Turned toward Meg with his handgun at the ready, and Wesley was frozen in place. It wasn't his gun that had blasted the thing to pieces. Here they come, Cowboy said, swinging around the smoking barrel of his rifle. Two of the three objects flying at the trio were blown to pieces, but one latched onto Wesley's right shoulder. It was a little blue-black fish. But when it opened its tiny mouth, it had rows of teeth like razor-sharp shards of glass, and it had bitten into the flesh of the young man's shoulder. Though he cried out in pain, Wesley shifted his gun from his right hand to his left and hammered it down on the fish's head, making the same noise the man had moments earlier. The fish with the pulverized head dangled limply from the young man's shoulder. Its fangs were still sunk in his flesh. The blood gushing out stained its corpse red. Run for it, Meg shouted, taking Wesley by the arm and dashing for the forest. Cowboy was right behind them. The relief flooded through her chest as soon as they made it into the trees. Meg ran on. "Enough. We're good now, Meg," Wesley told her, and she finally halted. They turned around. Cowboy was facing the bay with his rifle braced down by his hip. "How did it go?" Wesley asked. His breathing was ragged. Deep red had completely soaked his right shoulder. "You little bastard," Meg said, making a grab for the fish still latched onto him. With a squeal, she pulled her hand back. Though it should have been dead, she could distinctly feel the organs still working within it. "It's alive?" It came as no surprise that Wesley peered down at the fish, but even Cowboy craned his neck, squinted his eyes, and said, "It's sucking your blood." "What?" "Look. The gills are moving. It's inhaling. Only it's getting blood instead of seawater. What the hell is this? You bashed its head in, but it's not dead. Must be nearly immortal. And it came to suck your blood." Cowboy looked at Wesley. Perhaps the lawman read something in the bounty hunter's expression, because Wesley's face twisted horribly. He'd just been about to draw a bead on Wesley's chest with his rifle, but Meg's right hand gripped the pistol she'd pried from Wesley's grasp. "You were going to shoot him, weren't you? You can't." The girl's face was stiff with determination, but Cowboy gave her a wry grin and said, "Well, you stopped me, so you must know why I aim to shoot him, right? That fish is in league with the nobility, meaning whatever it feeds on will turn into one of them." He looked directly at Wesley, whose face was pale, and continued, "If we don't take care of you now, sooner or later you'll feed on us." His voice was like iron, and it carried a determination that rivaled Meg's own. Chapter 2, End.